Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel for Lost Moss. My name is Fumani and let's get straight into what we're talking about today. Previously, in my most recent video, I spoke about pure consciousness and its attributes and how it can assist you in your life. But today I'm focusing on polarity consciousness. I briefly touched on it in the video of pure consciousness, but I just would like you to get a an in-depth understanding of polarity consciousness and how you can actually use the mechanisms behind polarity consciousness to your benefit, to your advantage in your life. So basically, polarity consciousness operates on one fundamental action, and that is fragmentation. Let's write it down over here. So this is how polarity consciousness operates. It operates through fragmenting things, breaking them apart into digestible pieces, because polarity consciousness cannot take information as a whole. It's very limiting. It's quite narrowed down, versus pure consciousness, which has got a higher magnitude. It's much more wide, much more vast. It can take in much more information compared to the polarity consciousness. So polarity consciousness operates through fragmentation. It has to put things into categories, it has to put things into labels. But normally what transpires is that it breaks things into two. So the first way the polarity consciousness fragments itself from itself is the sense of having a self, and then the self is encountering a world. So this is the main premise of the polarity consciousness. This is the fundamental underpinnings of its illusion, that there is a self. This particular self has individual thoughts, individual feelings, and individual sensations that it feels across its body, which appears to be true. But when you actually study quantum physics, you realize that when you dive deep into matter, you realize that there's no separation. There's an interconnected energy that we all share. We are all one particle that's just expressed in different ways. But our normal purview of reality does not allow us to see this, because polarity consciousness has to fragment itself. It has to feel as if it is taking on the world. It has to feel as if it is going against something. There's a certain level of opposition and resistance. Okay, so in actuality, you can actually use this basic premise to your advantage if you choose to dwell within polarity consciousness. Firstly, you need to understand that if you are going to encounter the world in that way, suffering will play in the background of your existence. Why? Because you are operating from a incomplete premise. You're acting with incompletion. There's your act is not necessarily pure. It's not necessarily whole. It's not taking the bigger picture into consideration. Thus, your action doesn't have the full intensity that it needs. So, basically, from the benefits of actually seeing the world through a self and encountering an external world is that through that restriction, through that tension and opposition, creativity is actually born out of that. Why? Because now you see circumstances, you see events, you see physical objects that now you can manipulate and alter in order to better suit you. Of course, this takes responsibility, because now your creation is not necessarily only going to affect you, but your environment and everything, every organism that occupies that environment. Another way in which fragmentation actually transpires as well is through time. So we have this purview that the present moment is just a means to an end. Polarity consciousness is basically inundated in this kind of experience in which time is the only thing that exists. Polarity consciousness is always fixed on the future or the past. It's always moving back and forth between past experiences and future experiences. It can never root itself in the present moment. Why? Because polarity consciousness cannot exist in the present moment. Because polarity consciousness is bred, it is supported by concepts. Concepts can only entertain the future, they can only entertain the past. Concepts cannot necessarily intervene in the present moment. So, with regards to time, the way the polarized consciousness, polarity consciousness views it is that the present moment is only there in order to move into the direction of the future. And the present moment is only in existence here due to the movements of the past. And this makes conceptual sense. You cannot deny this at all. You cannot deny the fact of time existing conceptually. But as I did stress in my previous video, within pure consciousness, you are fixed in the present moment. Thus, when the polarized consciousness, polarity consciousness, stretches its essence into the future, it is but always coming back to pure consciousness. And that is what you can use to your advantage. Since pure consciousness is only fixated in the present moment, what the polarized consciousness can do is project itself into the future and then see a potential situation, circumstance that it prefers to experience, and then from that it needs to dissolve back to pure consciousness. Then pure consciousness can then take pure actions from that point of view in needing to achieve that in the future. Because whatever concept you'd like to achieve, whatever dream you'd like to achieve, whatever idea you'd like to take physical manifestation, can only be done if that information is brought into the present moment. Okay, so that's another way in which you can use time to your advantage in the way the polarity consciousness views reality. Another way is through negation. So if ever you want to achieve anything in your life, realize that there's a push-pull. There needs to be pain and coercively pleasure. So the higher the pleasure, the higher the intensity of the pleasure, the more pain you will need to experience. So through polarity consciousness, that is the foundation. It's pain and pleasure. You are going to move between these two opposites quite frequently. And the greater the pleasure, the more pain you're going to experience. Thus, if you ever want to change anything in your life, if you feel like you're stuck, if you feel like you're not moving in a direction that's going forward, always look at your present situation as the moment, as a thing that is creating pain. There needs to be a level of frustration, a level of anger, a level of resentment, and a level of not necessarily avoidance, but an aggressive energy that no longer wants that particular situation in this present moment because it is bringing pain. So this pain now is going to propel you into the future, in which you now look into the future and identify situations that will create pleasure, but now coercively to get there you needed to experience the pain. So always play back and forth with these opposites. Otherwise, your actions will not necessarily sustain themselves. So in order to continuously engage in an action that is beneficial for you, in the polarized consciousness and the polarity consciousness, you need to understand that you need to have pain in the background. So for instance, if you want R1,000,000, $1,000,000, whatever currency you operate with, if you want that, you need to literally visualize yourself having that kind of money, and it needs to bring about an intense amount of pleasure within you. And coercively, when you come back to the present moment needs to bring you pain. And that pain is actually going to help propel you to take the necessary steps that you need in order to achieve that goal. So there are myriads of ways in which polarity consciousness does operate. I will elaborate on that, of course, in my videos to come. But this is also basically the polarity consciousness operates through fragmentation. It breaks things down. It cannot take the whole of existence in. It has to take it in pieces. And through the self, through time, and through negation, those are the mechanics behind polarity consciousness, in which enable you to manipulate in order to ensure that you are closer to the experience of happiness, the kind of happiness that you would experience if you are dwelling within pure consciousness. So thank you very much for watching my video, guys. Please subscribe. And to end it off, as I always end it off, to those who seek no more, for in the present we find it all. Thank you very much, guys.